Welcome back to Spotlight, where we feature the University of Central Arkansas's College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. I'm Donna Lampkin-Stevens. And today I'm joined for the first time by my friend and colleague, Dr. Chris Roland, who is Assistant Professor of Communication. And he's going to talk about several things himself. We're going to get to know him better, and also about Communication Week, which is upcoming the second week of October. So Chris, welcome to Spotlight.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So tell us first, give me a little of your background. I think it's always fun to have new people on Spotlight so we can learn more about each other. Where are you from?
Yes, so I'm originally from Overland Park, Kansas, on the Kansas side of Kansas City in the KC Metro. I do have some family from Horseshoe Bend, tiny town in Arkansas, but I
Had
grew
you
up.
visited there?
No, I'd never been there before, but my dad's family is all from up there. So.
Okay. And so you grew up wanting to study communication, or what?
No, actually, I always had a big passion for history. So back when the History Channel was actually showing history instead of like American truckers or something like that, I would watch the History Channel pretty religiously, even as a younger kid. And so I knew pretty quickly that I wanted to be in education, though. So
Did your parents, were they educators? Okay.
yes, so my mom is about to retire actually from education after working there for 14 years, and my dad was a former physical education and high school science teacher as well
great.
before changing careers.
Okay. And so where did you go from Overland Park for your undergrad?
So I knew pretty quickly, like I said, that I wanted to be a teacher, and so the best avenue for that in Kansas, or one of the best, was Emporia State University, which is kind of a smaller town down the road from Kansas City, about 100 miles out of town. And I had a great experience there. Initially, I was a secondary education social science major, primarily focusing on history. But I guess I realized pretty quickly that I wanted to do something that was a little bit more accessible, and it's harder to make an argument all the time to people when you're studying people who've been dead for 1,000 years. And so I took a communication class as kind of my core, and I was smitten pretty quickly.
Just the intro to communication? Okay.
Yeah, so it was just, I took the basic presentational speaking course at that university, and then I took a communication theory course, and I could tell pretty quickly that that was an interest of mine, and I could apply some of my same interests in people, but I could kind of bring it into a more modern and applied situation. And so from there,
So at what point did you change your major?
let's see, late, like a lot of people.
Really?
I think I was my first semester as a junior.
Okay.
And then I changed, but I was able to get everything done. I had all of my basic courses done, so I could basically focus just on major courses. My past couple of years, it was an intensive load, but from there I was able to, successfully graduate and have a pretty well-rounded idea of the field of communication.
So at what point did you realize you were not going to teach in public schools and that you wanted to go to a university?
Certainly part of my reasoning was a pragmatic one. At the time, there were no secondary education jobs.
Especially in history.
Oh, certainly in history, absolutely, as is the case today, I'm sure. Just, there just aren't as many opportunities to pursue beyond that other than teaching. And so I was interested in higher education for a while, but of course the margins are even slimmer as a professor in history. And so it made a lot of sense to me right away, I think, that I wanted to go on and pursue my master's and PhD beyond that. So
I'm curious, did you have education classes? Because that's one of the things that sometimes students ask, well, that person can't teach, is not a good teacher. And I'm wondering, did you find that your education classes helped you in the classroom?
Absolutely.
At the college level?
Absolutely. And at the college level, we had to take 2 courses, and while I was still a history major in secondary social science, we had to take a pedagogy class, and then we had to take an applied class. So I would go to the local middle school and essentially tutor. I had to get, I think 120 hours was what was required over the course of a year or so. And I had to tutor students and get some hands-on experience with with pupils. And I really enjoyed that experience. It kind of affirmed, I think, my interest in education, and kind of getting into the pedagogical theory, the actual teaching how to teach was very, very helpful for me, I think, as well. Yeah.
Because a lot of, I hear this from students sometimes, that people who are experts in their field may not be experts in teaching. And so, yeah.
Makes sense,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And part of that, I think, is just experience.
Sure,
But
sure.
kind of having an ability to reflect on how that is useful and how you can apply it is also an advantage for sure.
So you went on from Emporia State to Purdue.
I became a Boilermaker.
Okay.
Didn't know what a Boilermaker was. Still not 100% sure. Our mascot is Purdue Pete, so it's just a man with a hammer. But
Okay.
whatever. It was a great school. I had a great opportunity to work there in the School of Communication. And I originally got interested in that because my advisor from my undergrad was a Purdue alumnus. And he kind of gave me the inside scoop of the program. And so it was pretty clear to me pretty quickly, even though I didn't know quite exactly what my angle was going to be in graduate school, I knew that Purdue was going to be a good place for me. So.
And so from you did your master's and then straight on into your PhD. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I happened to find a faculty advisor that I worked with very closely for a long time, and it just made the most sense to continue straight through.
Sure. So what was your dissertation?
My dissertation was looking at online information, misinformation that is. So I was really, really interested in persuasion. That's kind of one of my major research areas, but in particular, how misinformation spreads online. And so what I kind of settled on was kind of a practical situation. I was speaking before, with some other graduate students, speaking before a group of alumni from Purdue who were in positions of authority all over the United States, and just talking about my research. And of course, this was kind of at the formative time. I hadn't really figured out what I wanted to do, but I knew someone who was working for Amazon. And they had told me one of the big problems they have is issues with online reviews being falsified. And they are fake a lot. And we really don't know how many are falsified, but that's because people rely on them. It's credible. Even just for someone to say, I bought this, I know something about it, I can give you the inside scoop before you actually make that purchase. And so I wanted to understand, how is it you can tell, how can everyday people tell if an online review is falsified? And so I came up with a variety of just little pieces of information, little strategies people can use to tell for themselves, is an online review fake, and thus I probably shouldn't listen to what it has to say, or is it likely to be credible?
So can you give us a little snippet of give us a few of those tips.
Sure. So the biggest thing I would say is that people who falsify online reviews, they have a financial incentive to do this. It's either to promote something that is lower quality, or oftentimes as well, it's to speak ill of a competitor's product. But the underlying principle I found in my research is that those people are lazy. And so they want to maximize the number of fake reviews they get out there and minimize the amount of effort. And so what that means then is there's little tells, little cues I call them, that suggest that chances are, if there are two reviews, that they are authored by the same person. So one of them, for example, is quite simply a username. So you can usually tell that they are just kind of these mass spammed usernames, and it'll be John123 and John234 or something. So they tend to be very similar. Or they tend to have very similar sentiments. So they start off saying the same thing. This is the best thing I've ever bought. And it's something simple. It's like a pillowcase or something. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know people who feel that strongly mm-hmm. about a pillowcase. Mm-hmm. And so there's just little message cues that you can suggest that these are likely authored by the same person and then thus are falsified, because we assume when we go out there that if there's 1,000 reviews, each of them were authored by an independent person,
sure.
even though in practice, usually not the case.
Yeah, interesting, Chris. Mm-hmm. That is. We'll talk more about that at some point.
Sounds great.
So you graduate in 2019 with your PhD, and you start the job market. So how does that go?
Well, in academia, you really go where the jobs are. And so what was really important to me is I knew I wanted to be at an institution that valued teaching. I knew right away.
Because you're a teacher at heart.
Absolutely, yes. And that's kind of, kind of been in my bones for a long time. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I didn't want to spend, the next 30 years of my life or so in a large lecture just talking to people, not really making those interpersonal connections. And so more of a teaching school was of interest to me. Next is I wanted it to be applied. I wanted to find a place where I could do real world research that has an impact for people. So I think sometimes in academia, we might go to a conference and maybe there's 15 people in a room and those are the only people that are going to hear your research. So if I was going to do research, I wanted to have a broad reach and actually help a community. And so those were kind of my most important criteria. Also, I was over the cold. I was having been in Purdue and getting up one morning and it was 40 below. I was done with the cold. I'm done with the big snow drifts. And so I was very fortunate to get the opportunity to come to UCA. And it's just been a wonderful fit. And I feel like I've kind of exceeded all of my expectations far and above of being able to be in a teaching institution and do applied research and it not be freezing all the time.
Perfect. But then you're here a semester and a half, and the pandemic hits.
Yep.
So what was it like? I mean, I'm sure that first semester you were just sort of, trying to learn everything and sort of get in the routine and learn the culture. Tell me about that transition into the pandemic for you.
Absolutely. And I think you're totally right. Any job is going to have a learning curve.
Absolutely.
And I felt like just trying to keep my head above water at first, make sure I was doing all the right things, kind of get the flow of the university, what the students are like, because obviously it's still a change as well, even anytime you get new students, even though I had taught before. And I felt pretty confident. I felt the students were excellent, and kind of starting that transition was very easy, and I had not least you, but many other colleagues who were very supportive in that transition. And I thought by the end of the semester, all right, I think I've got it. I think I've gotten into the groove. And then right around
almost a spring break.
Yeah, and we'd kind of heard trickles that, hey, there's this thing called COVID-19. You might have heard about it in the news. And all of a sudden, we stop. And right around March, I think, as we were discussing, everything just stopped, and we had a couple of days to transition everything online. And
had you taught online before?
I had never taught online before.
You had not, and you're young, so you might have been doing it more than some of the others had, but it was a tough transition.
Absolutely, and not least trying to help a bunch of shell-shocked students who this is something that was understandably very scary for them as it was for us. We didn't really know what it was going to be like. And many students as well had never been online, and I know that we had issues of access for many students as well. Some students just didn't even have internet access, and so kind of getting everyone up to speed and talking about what is it really like to be online, I think took people a lot of time to really make that adjustment, and I think maybe we're still kind of making that adjustment a little bit as well.
But this semester seems more normal, doesn't it? Is this the most normal semester since you got here?
Yes, and I hope it continues that way. I think everyone is kind of finally getting back in the groove of things and trying to operate as though they were back in person without it. But for many of our students, I think they have only known online instruction and the pandemic, and so as a consequence, it's been challenging for them to just even make the transition back to being in a face-to-face class. And so I think it's understandable, but now the move is to try to operate as though we're moving beyond that.
Yeah. Moving ahead. So, and you have gone through mid-tenure, so you this is your fourth year, so we look forward to you continuing on your tenure journey. And part of that is service, and you have done an excellent job as the head of our events committee. Tell us a little bit about the events committee that you work on.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I certainly hope to continue in that goal. So the events committee is in our school, and we get people from all over our different programs to essentially try to come up with 2 big events a year. So in fall, we have Communication Week, where we're trying to celebrate the School of Communication. And in the spring, every year, we also host an awards ceremony to, again, celebrate and recognize all the wonderful things that our students do in the School of Communication.
So today we're going to talk about Communication Week 2022. And we have soldiered on even during the pandemic. So this is what year for you to be on the committee? Have you been on it every year?
I have been on it every year.
Okay.
This is my second full year as the chair of that committee.
Okay. So sort of overall, what is Communication Week and why do we have it?
So Communication Week is targeting an opportunity for us to really celebrate the School of Communication and all of our different programs. And part of that celebration, to my mind, comes from a place of people just not necessarily knowing what we have to offer. I think all the time there's certain majors where people hear the major, they know what it is. People who are pre-law, they know you're going to be an attorney. I have an idea in my head of what that's going to look like. A nursing major, I know what a nurse is, what they do. Engineering, I know what they're going to do. It's harder for a lot of our majors to really know just off the bat what the programs in the School of Communication have to offer. And there's certainly many, many things that they have to offer, often even beyond other, degrees in the university. But this is an opportunity for us to really show that to the university and the community as a whole.
Well, let's start. We have 4 degree programs. We have communication, journalism, public relations, and writing, rhetoric, and information design. We also have first-year writing and principles of communication as well. So what I've noticed in recruiting events that most of the kids coming from high school, if they are interested in communication, they think journalism, or because they can sort of see that. So we get a number of journalism students coming, but the skills that we teach are transferable across so many different versatile degrees, so and futures. So talk a little bit about each one. I guess each one of those as what sorts of skills are we teaching, and what kinds of jobs can these students get after they finish?
Absolutely, and I mean I couldn't agree more. I think one of the great things as well is although we have our great unique specializations in the School of Communication, we also share a lot in common. And part of my research, a lot of times, one of the courses I teach is professional communication. And so we look at where the jobs are in that class and how to get them, essentially. And so one of the things I always tell my students is if we look at research from the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and this is a large national organization that essentially asks employers, what qualities do you want to see in recent graduates? And the results have been the same for a long, long time. The qualities that employers want in recent graduates are all the same. We might think in our head, okay, maybe there's a technical skill like learning to code or something like that. Routinely, the things that are rated as the highest, and this is across all different disciplines and fields, are verbal communication skills, written communication skills, the ability to work in a group, critical thinking skills. All of those things are things that we can speak to in abundance. Absolutely.
Every day. So.
And I think that's one of the other wonderful things that we have in common is that we can each speak to those. And I think because communication is so central to everything we do in life, I think about this all the time, and I often have this exercise with a lot of my students. Try to not interact with people for even a week. It's pretty much impossible. And that means not talking to your friends, your family, not being on social media, not digesting media like TV, radio. It's pretty hard, and we'd be pretty lonely. And that's because communication is so central to everything we do. And I think, so we have this unique ability in common to express communication, but I think there's also a lot of unique things that each of our programs can offer. So I can speak first most closely to communication and public relations, given that those are the areas I'm most closely tied to. So in communication, we have majors go on to do a variety of different things. So many of them will go in public-facing roles like human resources. Many people will go into applications like marketing or advertising. People will get into administrative roles in the public and private sector. People will go to be market researchers oftentimes. And many of those roles are things that people didn't even imagine themselves pursuing. And I think there's consistently, we found in the research that a lot of the jobs that people are seeking now haven't been created yet. And so we'll have the ability to arm our students with those abilities regardless of where they go. And it's a similar sort of application in public relations as well. Many people go on to become public relations specialists. Social media management is a common one I see people pursuing. People work in-house oftentimes at large organizations as the public relations specialists, as kind of this public-facing person interacting with clients. And there's a big market for those sorts of things. For journalism, again, I know that we can speak to many of these different things, but and as you mentioned, many people have in their mind being a journalist, and so people can work in news. People can also, we found, I think we've had a lot of our majors go on in working in publishing as well. So for writing, rhetoric, and information design, there's a lot of different options. So one of the students who I worked with who has a most recent major has been a copywriter. So just communicating technical information or representing information using data and graphs in a way that is accessible to a broad audience. I think there's lots and lots of different things, suffice to say, that our programs can offer.
Yeah, I just don't know that there's another more versatile area that students can study. So
absolutely,
we're a little biased.
Of course, we can be biased.
So let's talk a little bit about the actual events for Communication Week. It's going to start on Monday, October 10th. What's the big event that day?
So our kickoff event and our theme this year is to try to kind of bring these programs together because we have so much to offer in common. One of the things that we kind of want to speak to is both our diversity of offerings, but also kind of the perspectives that we share and what we stand to gain from that. And so our inaugural kickoff is all about communication and coffee. So coffee being the thing that can kind of bring everything together, kind of establish a sense of community. And so what we're going to be doing to start off is we'll be meeting in the Thompson Hall lobby, essentially, and we'll be offering coffee and breakfast starting off around 9 in the morning. And this will kind of run all through the afternoon. We're kind of going to have an opportunity for professors, instructors, and students to kind of meet each other. So many people, oftentimes I suspect, feel like there's kind of a distance between professors and students. And so it gives kind of students an opportunity to put a face to the name, connect, and give them an opportunity to establish that connection. So we'll have some lawn games out there, likely some card games, people just to kind of come hang out, get to know each other, and also preview what's going to happen for the remainder of the week. We're going to have the Public Relations Student Society of America is going to be donating some pizzas.
Great.
Closer to lunch.
So we'll go from breakfast to lunch.
So come hungry.
Great. And then on Tuesday is one of the highlights, our Alumni Panel. That has grown every year, and I think the students have really enjoyed that. Just give us a little overall view of it.
Absolutely. So during X period,
which is 1:40 p.m.
We're going to have alumni from each of our different degree programs. They're going to come back through Zoom. So if you can't make it in person, that'll be an opportunity to come by and just view it on Zoom, but basically share their experiences of their time at UCA and what comes next. I think it's one thing to hear it from professors who certainly have their own perspective. It's another thing to hear it from former students. And I have seen it time and time again, just how much the students seem to value that. And we have a couple of folks from all over who are going to be sharing their experiences and how they got from graduation to the career they're in now.
And I know that journalism's alumnus is going to be Cassidy Kendall, who was a December 2018 graduate, and she is a freelance journalist in Hot Springs. She's founded the Hot Springs Post, and she is an author. She's written 100 things to do in Hot Springs before you die. So she's sort of on a hot path right now. And who do we have coming from? Let's see, PR. I think Brittany Wells is coming from writing, rhetoric, and information design. And who is the PR person?
Yeah, so we have Nick Stovall who will be coming, and I do not know this person individually, but I have heard some wonderful things from my colleagues in public relations, and Nick is involved with Sam's Club in a public-facing sort of role, and working, again, one of those versatile majors or roles we didn't really think about.
Yeah.
And kind of working with them. So.
And I understand the comm person is not quite confirmed yet. So,
yes, we're waiting on confirmation for that.
Good.
So more to follow.
So that's on Tuesday. What's going on Wednesday?
So on Wednesday, to kick it off, we have Ellen Kreth, who is going to be our guest speaker, who's going to be joining. And I know that you know.
She's the publisher of the Madison County Record, and they have won some excellent journalism awards for their coverage of this situation at the local school district where there was some hazing of junior high boys. It's quite a story, and I think that will be interesting to everyone. She's coming. Her public talk is at 4 p.m. Where is that going to be?
That's going to be in Stanley Russ 103.
Okay. Okay.
And immediately following that, at 6 p.m. in the same location, Stanley Russ 103, we're going to have the Olive Hilliard Speech Showcase.
Good. And this features our Principles of Communication award winners. Okay.
Absolutely. So these are some of our best and brightest speakers, and they're going to come and present their topics, and we're going to have a set of panelists, judges, who are going to evaluate them and deem a winner.
Good. So that's a double schedule on Wednesday, and then on Thursday we'll end it with a bang.
Yes, it'll be a wonderful, chaotic, but really fun opportunity. So we'll be hosting School of Communication Jeopardy. So this will be both online and in person in Thompson Hall, and more details about that will follow on our social media accounts. But we are going to have groups of our students who are going to be competing in a Jeopardy-style game session.
From each of the different programs. Okay.
Exactly, yes. So we'll have someone from CompR, RID, and journalism. They'll be competing for all the glory and maybe a prize as well. And it's going to be based upon their knowledge of the School of Communication.
Okay. Okay, excellent. So, Chris, all of these events are free. They're mainly aimed at our students, I think,
yes.
But public is certainly welcome to attend as well, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And so, just follow us on social media, and we will have more details there. Is it too difficult to plan? How has the planning gone?
There's some moving parts, but. I work with some great colleagues who kind of help us streamline the process, and we're able to kick it off successfully every year. So
I think it's going to be a good one. I think people are glad to be back. We've been sort of online most of the last couple of years. So, well, Chris, we'll have you back sometime to talk again about comm and your research. And we appreciate you joining us, and we hope that you'll all join us again next time for Spotlight.